Thank you, Carol. And it's my pleasure to be here with Prime Quadrant and to be moderating our esteemed panel of philanthropists. We're going to focus on a few things around philanthropy. We want to talk about the relationship between business and philanthropy. We want to talk about how you actually decide on philanthropic investments and hopefully have a tip or two from our panel members on how you actually get started on that philanthropic journey. So let me start by introducing our panel. On my far right, we have Rebecca McDonald. That's MacDonald, M-A-C. And Rebecca is founder and executive chair of Just Energy Group, a Toronto-based marketer of deregulated natural gas and electricity. Rebecca was named Canada's top woman CEO for 5 years in a row by Profit magazine. Rebecca is also vice chair of Mount Sinai Hospital. Very good person to have on our panel. And Rebecca is the founder of the Rebecca McDonald Center for Arthritis Research at Mount Sinai and is involved in several other charities. Rebecca is a recipient of the Horatio Algiers Award Canada. In the middle, we have our esteemed Tony Comper, past president and chief executive officer of BMO Financial Group. Tony is a director of numerous corporations and boards, including Spectra Energy Corporation and the Canadian Institute for Advanced Research. He has also served on many charitable boards, and he and his wife Elizabeth are co-founders of FAST, Fighting Anti-Semitism Together, a Canadian human rights activist group. Tony has received the Human Relations Award from the Canadian Council of Christian and Jews and the Order of Canada in 2011. Tony. And our third panel member is Nancy Lockhart. Nancy is a seasoned executive, presently serving as the Chief Administrative Officer of From Development Group. Nancy has also spent many years in retail business, serving as senior executive positions at Shoppers Drug Mart, Brewers Retail, and Jumbo Video. Nancy sits on the board of the Loblaw Company Limited and is also a board member of several charitable foundations, including CAMH Foundation, the Canadian Merit Scholarship. She served as 8 years of chair of the Ontario Science Centre, chair of the Canadian Film Centre, and president of the Canadian Club. So, welcome to our esteemed panel members, and we are going to get right down to business. We have 3 questions for our panel members, so I'll ask the question and we'll answer all 3, and then go to our next question, and hopefully we'll have a few minutes at the end to answer any questions that you might have. So, our first question is, all 3 of you have been successful in your businesses and in your philanthropic investments. Is there a correlation between your business and your philanthropic giving, and how has one influenced the other? Rebecca, may we start with you, please?
Sure.
Thanks.
I wouldn't say at the beginning there was a real correlation between my business and my philanthropic giving. It was more of a patient-doctor relationship that got me into philanthropic giving. I was being a first-generation immigrant, you're kind of always trying to prove yourself and make it, and you don't ever have enough time to think about anything else. And then the moment you get sick, you realize you only have one wish: to get better. And when you are healthy, you have thousands of wishes. So I got to that position of getting sick and putting myself in a position to say, my God, I only want to get better. And if I can get better, I have responsibility of giving opportunity to other patients with a similar disease to get better. So that's how I started. Because the company I founded and I run is, and it's going to be interesting what we're going to hear next, because I'm not going to steal your thunder, pays the dividend to the shareholders. So they are very, shareholders are very sensitive of how you give the money. So as more successful my company became, and obviously more money I made a fundamental decision that I do want to actively donate to different causes. And there are many causes, we'll talk about it later. But the catalyst for me was a doctor that made me better. Dr. Keystone, he's phenomenal. In those days, he was at Wellesley Hospital, and I was wheeled in, had a severe, worst case of rheumatoid arthritis. Out of 104 different types, I had to get the worst. And somebody recommended him. He looked at me and he simply said, "You're in a bad shape." I thought, I know I'm in a bad shape. And he said, "I don't know whether I can make you better. I can try this or that. I'm not going to lie to you. Or we can try experimental therapy." And I said, "I've got people to see, places to go to. I want to take my business public." And Dr. Keystone looked at me and he said, "You know what? You do that. You owe me a center." And I said, "Absolutely, just make me better." So I got on experimental drug. It was very experimental in those days. Worked on me beautifully. Took the company public. First call I got was from Dr. Keystone. "You made a promise, you've got to deliver on a promise." And I never looked back. I mean, he opened up my eyes to patients that did not have a facility to go to. And it was the best decision of my life, and it just kind of snowballed.
Very good.
A great story. Thank you, Tony.
Actually, it's interesting. I'll pick up on an interesting point that Rebecca made, which is from time to time, the question arises as to the appropriateness of publicly traded companies giving away money for charity. And in fact, a little note of history, in 1927, the Bank of Montreal was sued by one of our shareholders for precisely that reason, because we had made a group donation to 4 hospitals in Montreal. And the claim from the shareholder was that it was an inappropriate use of shareholders' money to be given to that. In our defense, and by the way, the lawsuit was turned down by the Quebec Superior Court, thank God, but in the defense, it stated that it was in the best interest of the bank to maintain the prosperity in the community in which it operates. And our bank, like all the banks in Canada, operate in every single community across this nation. And our abiding philosophy is that it's in our interests. We can never be more successful than the communities in which we work and operate, and therefore it's in our interest to support them in a wide range of activities, whether it be health services, whether it be the arts, whether it be the local hockey teams, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's been our philosophy of business.
Thank you. Nancy.
Well, I think one learns to be philanthropic through interaction with your family or with your peers. And I found early on in business that just by looking around, you could see very clearly the benefits of taking some of your earnings and plowing them back into the communities. And over the years, I found it to be exceptionally motivating to get staff involved with giving money away from the company. Listening to what their causes are, supporting those causes, is just good business. It's good for the community, it's good for the employees, but it's good business. It keeps your people motivated, it gives them an added attraction to the firm, and we all know that retaining employees in this marketplace is one of the things we worry about. And so I would say that it's very good business. In terms of what causes to support, getting employee input is very helpful. It leads you deeper into the communities in which you're operating. And when you're operating at an executive level, you don't often get the chance to really delve into those communities. So having that employee input is absolutely invaluable. So I would say that's only one part of philanthropy. The obvious correlation between actually earning income and having the ability to give away comes as a result of business, unless you're lucky enough to inherit a lot of money. So I think there's the causes that you give to because they're part of your community and part of your business strategy. And then I think you develop over time interest, as Rebecca talked about having an illness that took her along a particular path. I think life takes you along paths that incite you to invest in different philanthropic causes. So there's a meshing. I don't think that you can separate one from the other, but I think the ability to give away is really one of the greatest pleasures in life, and all of us who do well enough to be able to share what we have are really lucky. Great
examples, and it just shows you that philanthropy can come from the very innermost part of yourself as an individual, or part as you grow and develop your businesses. So it's a very wide spectrum, and it's great to hear the differences at the table. So let's move to the second question, which is you all have a variety of philanthropic investments, and we do talk about philanthropy as being an investment. It's an investment of your money into a charitable organization that is doing good in the public. And, you know, it should be something that you don't just write a check and forget about it, but that it's something that you actually are involved with, you're a part of, it means something to you, and you can actually see the results of your giving down the road. It might not be immediate, but down the road. So with our panel, their philanthropic investments cover a very broad spectrum, and it includes the health sector, education, social services, and the arts. There are over 85,000 charities in Canada alone. So my question is, as a philanthropist, how do you decide where your philanthropic investments are best directed? So perhaps, Nancy, we could start with you. Thanks.
My husband and I sat down about 5 years ago, and if you look back 5 years in Toronto, you remember that we were right in the middle of the infrastructure spending. So the ROM, the AGO, all of these big projects where there was matching dollars from government were taking place. And so everybody was giving big money to hospitals, to education, and to the big five arts organizations who were the beneficiaries of these government funds. And we looked around and decided that while it was worthy to give to all those causes, and we gave to a number of those causes, there were an equal number of causes, some of those 85,000 charities in Ontario, who were really suffering as a result of these big projects. And the push was so intense because of the need to match the dollars, that a great whoosh of money was being taken away from these smaller charities. And so we decided that we were going to spend some of our funds on these big projects, but that we were going to set aside a nice sum of money to give to the smaller charities that have a very important place in the community, but don't have as broad an impact. So things like the Smile Theatre Company that takes live theatre to seniors and nursing homes. Very hard to raise money for. The bank, Tony Comper and Liz at one point put together a fundraiser that raised $120,000 for that cause. It has an annual budget of $250,000. But this is the sort of cause that makes an enormous impact in people's lives, but it's hard to raise money for because the elderly people in the nursing homes and hospices don't buy anything, they don't influence anybody, and they don't go anywhere. And so there are so many causes like that have enormous impact to the people who benefit from them, but they're not sexy, you don't get your name on something, but they make our society a much better place. And so we decided that we were going to split our money and invest in those causes as well as the big causes. And a couple of years ago, my brother got sick with mental illness, and I didn't know anything about mental illness at all, and was exposed to a whole new world. And as a result of that, I joined the CAMH Foundation. And I have to say that getting involved with a charity that you really care about, whether it's CAMH Foundation or the Science Center that I was involved with or the Film Center, makes all the difference, because you really can see how the money is spent and how it impacts the area that you're concerned about. So we look pretty strategically at how we're going to spend our money, and we look at the financial statements of the institutions. We make sure that the appropriate amount of money is being spent on administration, so that the money you're donating is actually doing what you want it to do. And so these are some of the considerations that we think about when we invest.
Great. Tony.
We have supported arts organizations, the health services. Part of it is an emotional attachment. we've had a long family history with St. Michael's Hospital. My mother was a nurse there. My sister was a nurse there. All my brothers and sisters were born there. My dad died there, and I was on the board for 10 years. And so that would be a natural emotional connection with an institution. Not the only reason for supporting, but certainly is an important one. Also, if you involve yourself with organizations, whether they be arts organizations, health organizations, or social services organizations, large or small, there always will be an expectation that directors of these institutions would support them financially as well as from a governance perspective. So when they approach you and ask you to join the board of Mount Sinai Hospital, there will be an associated expectation that you will be supportive, which is natural, by the way, and I think that's totally appropriate. But Nancy's right. The closer you get to the organizations, you can actually see what your philanthropic dollars are doing and how they're improving the lot of life of the organizations.
Rebecca?
In my philanthropic giving, today, at this stage of my life, there are two parts. There is a corporate part now, and there is Rebecca's part. Rebecca's part is very, very focused. I made the decision that I want to be involved with one hospital. I wanted to be involved with one university. I wanted to be involved with one organization that will help underprivileged children reach their potential. And doing it that way, I felt my dollar was getting the best result because I was intimately involved with every single one of those institutions. And not that I can 100% control it, but I felt there is a relatively quick reward. From a corporate perspective, over the years, I have developed a culture in our corporation, and I take a big part of that credit alongside of our employees, that the 85,000, as you said, worthwhile causes. And one individual cannot reach them all. But I encouraged within my own organization that every employee gets involved in some form or another. It doesn't have to be money. It can be time donated. It can be becoming a big brother or big sister. And then once they are involved and really, really active, then they can come to us corporately and say, you know what, can you sponsor this hockey team in the northern community where nobody wants to even consider giving money? And we found out that working with our employees hand in hand on the smaller scale worked very, very effectively. So we tried to reach as many, not obviously 85,000, but as many as possible. Majority of giving is around energy. My company is in energy business. We supply energy in United States, in Canada, and in UK. So I do want to make sure that elderly are not freezing in Chicago, that we will give them heat. But that's not the only thing we do. That's a first step, and then we expand to other areas, and it does work very well. But then, on the other side, it's very important who comes in and asks for it and how they ask for it. That's the key. Presentation is everything because we all get hit all the time. So I like concise presentations with a very clear goal. That carrot can't be too far. It has to be close for us to make that decision.
That's great. That's great. Great examples, and really interesting from your family approach, Nancy, to Tony, how you have looked at things, and then Rebecca, your two sides of looking at giving. I think really helps give the audience some ideas on how you can either start to incorporate philanthropy in your daily life, or bring it into your workplace and start to have some corporate philanthropy happening. So on that note, I wanted to ask you if you had a tip for someone just starting on a philanthropic journey, or two. Could you give one or two tips to this group of people who may want to learn a little bit and start off on this journey that may have been helpful to you when you were first starting, or may be helpful to someone as they begin their approach? So Tony, can we start with you?
Sure. It's interesting. Earlier in my career, when I hadn't done much fundraising or much involvement in the philanthropic sector, there would always be a little bit of a hesitation to ask people for something, for money or for something else of that nature. And it was only after a period of time that the master fundraiser of all time was educating me in the business of philanthropic and soliciting money. He said, "Tony, you have to get yourself into the mindset of you're doing them a favor by asking them to support this initiative." And when you think about it, and the other tip was that he said, you're probably not going to be as successful if you're just asking people to sign checks and things of that nature. It's very important to get people involved with the organization that you're asking them to support, so that they can see that connection between what they're doing and the impact it has on that organization. It's a longer sales cycle, can be a very long period of time, but it's very effective in the long run to develop that linkage, that attachment between the individual and the organization that you're asking them to support.
Right. Rebecca?
To start off, I would say all of us are very, very privileged to be in a position to give. And we should start with that. If you want to give, I believe you will be the most effective philanthropist if you feel very passionate about the cause. If there is no passion, if it is just writing a check, it might be fine 1 year, but then you're just going to forget about it. So pick your spots and get involved. Nothing wrong, as Tony said, if you even involve people on a voluntary basis for 6 months, a year, to get them in. And my only other tip is don't be afraid to ask for their time or for their money. Ask, because it's a good ask. But make sure that you judge your passion and you judge someone else's passion well, so you can get them in.
Right. And Nancy?
I think one of the best ways to get involved is to set up a family foundation. And even with a relatively modest sum of money, one can open a family foundation within the Toronto Community Foundation for as little as $25,000. What that takes away from you is the need to do all the paperwork. So they do all the paperwork, they take a small fee, and then you can tell them what your interest is, whether your interest is in health or children or women, and they will provide you a list of the charities who are working in that area that are money. This is a particularly good approach for children. It's a great way to get your kids involved in giving money away. So they can decide what interests them, whether it's kids' lunch programs or it could be anything, seniors. And then they can decide where the money should be invested. They can then follow the money. So if they follow the charity for a couple of years and you help teach them what to look for, how much of the money is spent on administration, what they said they were going to do, what did they actually do? And it teaches them to be smart investors and smart philanthropists. So I would recommend getting the very young people in your family involved as soon as you can.
Great tips, great starting tips. We have a few minutes for some questions, if there are any out there. Sure.
What would you recommend as far as splitting corporate giving and individual advantages for each one?
Uh,
Whether you should give corporately on behalf of your company, or whether you should make your donations personally or through a foundation?
Both of the above, I think. I don't make a distinction between the either or of doing it through the corporation or doing it individually. I think both have a role to play. And as you would expect with an organization like ours, we pretty well support the broad spectrum of health services, education services, and the arts, and we would be expected to do so. It would be impossible for us to stand aside from any one of these initiatives just by virtue of the fact that we're so involved in so many of the communities. Personally, I think those are personal decisions, and they might be different than the corporate decisions, but I think the two work together.
Anyone else want to comment?
No,
No, we're good.
I would agree, but in my case, it always worked out that I gave way more personally than my corporation did, and that was personal decision on my part. You know, at the end of the day, regardless of how much money you got, you can only sleep at one bed at a time. So I had this philosophy that my children are fully aware of, that I wanted to give a good portion of my money to charity. And I think a decision has to be made whether your company is public or private. When it is a public company, you're dealing with the board of directors, you're dealing with all kinds of corporate governance issues that come into play, and I personally do not like getting involved on that end. If it is a private company, there is no difference whether you're giving or the company is giving, in my opinion. It's one of the same.
Yeah, there may be tax advantages in a private company from
Yeah.
giving from the company, as
From the
opposed to having
company.
to take the income yourself, pay the tax on it, and then give. So.
Okay. Any more questions? No? We're good. Well, I want to thank you all very much, Rebecca, Tony, and Nancy. I really appreciate you coming and sharing your personal philanthropic experiences. It really means a lot. And oh, Dawn, I didn't see you. I mean, I saw you, but I didn't see your question. Please.
In Canada, gifts of listed securities are exempt from capital gains tax.
Why do we know he was going to say that?
How could he not?
In the United States, gifts
Exactly.
of capital property are exempt. That includes gifts of listed securities, private company shares, and real estate. What do you think of the idea of expanding the capital gains tax exemption to include gifts of private company shares and real estate, so that it will result in a significant increase in charitable giving for organizations like Mount Sinai Hospital?
What we should do is keep Don chewing on that bone the way he does. He more than anyone else in this room, I think, has made a dramatic impact on this. And contrary to the fears of the politicians who worried about this as kind of eroding the revenue base, that did not pan out. In fact, it's gone exactly the other side. So kudos to Don for having done that. And I think we should follow on with exactly what you're saying, Don.
I agree.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
All right, carry on.
Carry on.
All right, thank you very much, Terry. Thank you to each of our panelists.